Welcome to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast. And you're very welcome back to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast with your host Mark Kennedy, joined again this week by Danny O'Brien and Simon Stokes as we run the rule over the NFL playoffs. Guys, how are things?
Good, Mark.
Great. First round of the playoffs in the books. Wildcard Weekend didn't disappoint here, guys, so we'll probably go straight into it in the Wildcard Weekend. I suppose, Danny, highs and lows from your perspective. I know Steelers fan, he exited in Buffalo, but what were the main talking points from your perspective?
I suppose, like, if I had to, the main highs I'd look at the first half of the Texans-Browns game, that looked like it was just going to turn into just a shootout. It was a brilliant first half there. The first half of the Cowboys-Packers was one of the more surreal games I think I've ever watched, and you realize just how weird the event was you were watching when the pick six happened, because you could even hear the audible horrible screams in the stadium as the Cowboys realized, oh my God, this is actually really happening. Like, those were two definitely. I enjoy that game. And yeah, I suppose, like, yeah, I mean, the way the Rams-Lions game, the way that went, the intrigue that wasn't around it, I mean, it lived up to the billing. And if your team is still not in the playoffs, well, actually, that's all of us here now. I'm going to guess that if you're looking, like, from the neutral standpoint, I'm guessing most of you must be looking at the Lions and going, yeah, I mean, if you want a team to win it, given the horror they've been through forever, a lot of neutrals will be looking at the Lions now and hoping they can go the whole way.
Absolutely. And they're Detroit as well, the comeback city, aren't they? Many decades of rack and ruin there. So, but Simon, I suppose, fling the question over to you.
I suppose the highs for me was probably the emergence of the whole youth movement across the NFL. Like, you had Stroud in Houston doing wreck. You have that ridiculously young wide receiver core in Green Bay. Had an they all contributors. You had wide receiver Tampa Bay the other night, played a massive game as well. Look, I think everyone would have picked the Cowboys to win last weekend, and absolutely shocking result, but it was absolutely unreal. Like, at the same time, I suppose, look, personally, one of the lows for me was I thought the Dolphins didn't show up at all and didn't handle it. You'd have to wonder, are they a bit of a fraud? But overall, it was a very enjoyable weekend. The games, looking forward to the coming weekend as well.
Absolutely. Then we'll get back to you. I mean, maybe we start with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, the big storyline over the weekend was the big blizzard that hit Buffalo. Like, if you've ever been to Buffalo this time of year, you know that the snow is a given anyway, but like the quantity of it. So the game deferred from Saturday to Monday, 31-17 to the Bills. But I suppose, Danny, from your perspective as a Steelers fan, I suppose, you know, it was a respectable performance given the injuries.
Yep. Oh no, granted, the first half I was fearing this could go like it was going to go like the Cowboys Packers, because the Bills were just moving the ball down the field at will, and the fact that Pittsburgh got within a score of them in the fourth quarter, I was sitting there going, no, they can't. Surely there is no way they can pull this one out of the hat. But no, I wasn't surprised at the Bills winning, and even like when you consider of all the teams in the playoffs, when it came to issues at quarterback or just uncertainty around it. Yeah, kind of outside of the Browns, like the Steelers are still big questions going into the offseason from that perspective. And like I said last week when you asked, do you think they'll win it? Nope. No what? And I think this weekend, because he wasn't playing and because the other two potential candidates for Defensive Player of the Year didn't really play well, I'm looking at this going, like, I mean, if you're looking at the tail of the tape and what Watt has done and his record and everything, I'm like, I don't care. If he doesn't win Player of the Year, he's Defensive Player of the Year, because the other two, like Myles Garrett, if I'm looking at an MVP from the weekend from a defensive, like Laramie Tunsil, I'd give him, like, he went up against Garrett and he absolutely shut down a player who's supposed to be the elite in the area, and Tunsil. And he has a number, every time they've gone, I think, Garrett's managed one pressure against a quarterback that Tunsil's been guarding. So, funnily enough, one of Bill O'Brien's moves that he made, I mean, it damned the Texans at the time, but it's kind of come back to be a benefit for them. And yeah, kind of like with Steelers, I wasn't surprised. And again, going to Buffalo, and they were making the playoffs. And again, now it's been highlighted the fact that's 5 playoffs in a row they've lost now. And is there an issue there? Yes, there is. But until quarterback kind of gets solved, it's going to remain an issue. And like I said, it's still a defense that lives and dies by Watt playing. Yeah,
but I suppose what Simon had mentioned at the start of the podcast regarding Miami Dolphins, at least Pittsburgh Steelers gave it a go. You know, they're really challenge, which is
Miami
great.
Just didn't want to be there. They were like, screw this, too cold. Right, we're gone.
Yeah. Simon, do you want to come in there?
Yeah, I think I mentioned it last week. The Bills haven't lost since the bye. They've only lost one game in that big scoring game against Philly, lost in overtime since they changed the offensive coordinator. They're going very well. Geez, they were had they 3 touchdowns up before? No, in fairness, Pittsburgh made a bit of a comeback.
Yeah, it was
but
panicking.
they were missing Gabe Davis as well last week, who's been a major. He's probably their second receiver. They made deadly use of their tight ends. The one thing I worry small about the Bills is the Bills are strong enough in coverage, and the corner went down last week, and I think they lost one of the defensive linesmen as well. And I just wondering about depth going forward, like the really tough game this weekend against Kansas, and I just worry about depth. But they're probably the farm team in the NFL. Going into next weekend, to be honest, I don't know that they fear anyone. They're going to be playing at home next week. Baltimore, look, we'll probably talking about Baltimore and the Texans in a while, but Baltimore after a couple of weekends off without any meaningful ball, so you just don't know how they'll react to that. But yeah, I thought the Bills were good. Danny, I'd wonder, like, what are Pittsburgh going to do in the quarterback position now? They haven't really answered any questions. Rudolph is out of contract next year, as far as I know. At the same time, he's probably only a game manager. He's a top quality backup for someone, on what he's done the last couple of weeks. But you're not going to pay him. Do you think they'll drive into next year with Pickett?
I get the feeling out of just stubbornness they might, when maybe going for a bit, like the mentioned, there's been 1 or 2 quarterbacks that have been linked with them too. But even at that, how much of a premium would they have to pay for those? I get the worry, kind of, it could be, it's like, say, the Jets comparison I can think of there is like, we've drafted this guy is going to work, and they want him to work, and you'd like Pickett to work, but like the outside world, you're looking at it going, I don't think so. Like, I think it could. I wouldn't be surprised if it is Rudolph and Pickett just kind of competing for that number 1 slot. But I think, like, even the Steelers and every other team in the NFL will have to look at it and go, we need to make sure we have a top caliber quarterback 3 and 4, because the injury rates this year have just shown you need that strength. That is like quarterback 1 is going to be the highest paid. You can nearly say the second highest paid player could be the backup, because that's how important it is. But it's up in the air. But I wouldn't be surprised if it is Pickett and Rudolph who are the 2 going into training camp that they're going to be competing for it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose, guys, I know we've kind of touched about Dallas Cowboys, but I thought the most underwhelming performance was Philadelphia Eagles down in Tampa Bay. Now, we had issued the warning signs last week in the preview that we were wondering what sort of Eagles performance would come onto the field in Tampa Bay, but to be perfectly honest, there was no one. We talk about the Miami Dolphins about not turning up. I think it's a massive fall from grace here, Simon, in terms of a Super Bowl contender.
I think both on the Manning cast during the game on Monday night, and also I think the live TV coverage, they both picked up on the Philly D didn't seem to want to be there at all. They didn't seem too pushed about it. They looked like a team that were totally unmotivated. There was all talk last week about AJ Brown having a players only meeting, and when you have a player calling a players only meeting like that the week before a playoff game and he injured himself, it often doesn't point in the right direction. I think everything is looking like it's likely that they're going to be a whole change of the guard there in Philly. Like we spoke last week about how the defensive backroom was upheaved in the off season last year. It obviously hasn't worked. Somehow, when Patricia took over in those last 4 or 5 games, in every single one of the, I suppose, quantifiable things that a defense can do, they just disimproved. So I'd say Sirianni's he's probably going to get the sack. Who goes in there? I don't know. It just came into my head today. Would Vrabel be a suitable candidate? Well, I'd say Belichick is going to Atlanta from the sounds of things. I don't know. Would Vrabel go in there? Like, he's a defensive coach, and they have enough pieces in offense that they probably could make it work. Probably overpaid Hurts last off season, to be honest with you, but you're going to get that in the bounce after a Super Bowl. Just on Tampa, I think one of the major stories of this year is Baker Mayfield. The man is getting paid $4.5 million a year, which looks good money, but it's not even backup money. There's about 12 or 13 fairly average backups that are getting paid more than him. Like going forward, a couple of years ago, they drafted this Kyle Trask out of Florida as a kind of back. Any time that he's seen the field, it hasn't done well. I think it's likely the way things are lining up. Like Baker Mayfield only signed a 1-year contract. They're probably going to keep him around there because he's doing the job. Some of his throw was desperately accurate the last day, and they absolutely tore them apart on the long throws. So yeah, I'd say one of the stories for me, like I know Damar Hamlin is going to walk the comeback player of the year, even though I think he only was brought into the field for 2 plays this year, but he'll get us. But like Baker Mayfield's justifiably is coming back from nowhere, and he's after turning that franchise into a team that we're probably looking at a fairly low draft pick next year, into a team that are after getting to the divisional round.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's been a marvellous turnaround for Tampa Bay, really. From both week 9 and week 10, it looked a bit iffy for him, didn't it, in NFC South? But one of the classic ones was Detroit Lions and LA Rams, wasn't it, guys? You know, There were so many storylines in terms of the quarterbacks. And I mean, it didn't really disappoint here, Simon, just in terms of the ending of this game.
No, it was fantastic. And it was a late game on Sunday night, so I didn't see it live, but I was watching the day after. And it was just until the first half, seems every single drive seemed to be a score, either touchdown or field goal, and bang, bang, bang. And you're saying, geez, what's this going to end up? And everything tightened up then in the second half. I thought it was a peculiar enough call out of McVay, and I've a lot of admiration for McVay, what he did this year, because like that team, he's only a couple of years out from a drive for a Super Bowl. But like I know now they had a 4th and 14, but with about 4 minutes left, they kicked it back, and they didn't touch the ball for the rest of the game. And look, they were around midfield. They needed to stop. If they didn't get the 4th down, they just needed to stop, and they got the ball back again. I thought it was peculiar that they kicked it back, and it's maybe a bit uncharacteristic for McVay.
Of the games of the weekend, this was the one I had the most difficulty. Even like when we were trying to pick, I was like, I wouldn't have been surprised if Stafford did decide to, if he did go back and was kind of did a job on them. Yeah, but like McVay is, for all of his strengths, like he does have like even his time management. He always seems to like he has to take timeouts when he really shouldn't have to. Like there are times where he's nearly almost like Guardiola. He's nearly too eccentric for his own good. So like I mean the Rams will come out of this season going, like, we didn't expect to get this far. And in particular with Puka Nacua, they have an absolute gem there they picked in the late rounds. I mean, my God, what you're looking at him being, he's one of the rookies of the year, full stop. And again, this is a franchise who threw away all their picks and are still finding gems. And it really does show from their perspective, like rather than having to do a complete rebuild, they've rebuilt on the go. They've kind of done what the Steelers do in terms of their staying relevant and not having to totally blow things up and start from scratch with it. So like the Rams they will be disappointed because the chance was there, but also like from the Lions perspective, I mean, just even look at the people who were in the stadium and the atmosphere around it. I would not want to be going into that stadium at any stage, and especially because like that crowd, like we said, it's Detroit. They know how to generate that atmosphere, and they're getting serious interest, especially with how crap the Pistons are.
Oh, fact. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, Simon, it's going to be a daunting. I know we're going to talk about it in a few minutes about Tampa Bay traveling to Detroit, but I mean the atmosphere in Detroit last weekend was just magnificent.
It will be unreal. I was delighted to see them. I think sometimes in sport people give too much homage, or when a fella scores the goal against a former team and doesn't celebrate. I think that's a lot of rubbish, to be honest with you. I love the fact that a lot of the Detroit boys give Stafford a bit of an earful the other night. Fair enough, he was a good player and was there, but he was an away player and he was the enemy as far as they were concerned the other night. So I was delighted to hear a bit of booing. Just on it, we didn't mention him, but I was delighted for Goff. I think Goff gets a lot of kind of rubbish. Goff, I think Goff is one of the smartest quarterbacks in the league. Now he'll probably go away and throw 3 interceptions next week. But I think he very rarely makes a bad decision. Like he might be a top 5 quarterback, but I think he's just about a top 10 quarterback now. I think he very rarely makes a bad decision. And like there was an awful lot of fallout. He was kind of like the toy that was thrown away when Stafford went to the Rams. And like I'm delighted they are, like as you're saying, they're probably going to be or likely to be getting through next week and stuff. I know we'll talk about it. Well, the one thing I'm a bit sorry about, it's a pity that Green Bay were second in that. It would be unreal to see a conference final up in cold Green Bay, Lambeau Field between two division rivals. To be absolutely unreal.
Oh.
Now, I know that there's a lot of boxes to be ticked before you get as far as there, but it's a pity that it'd be Detroit or something like that came about.
Oh no, absolutely no. Well, playoffs, you just never know. But I suppose we concluded here, guys. I know you touched on Miami Dolphins not turning up, but I suppose, Danny, from a Kansas City Chiefs perspective, how did you rate that performance?
I think that for the rest of the league, it could be a case of, were these guys doing a rope-a-dope and making us think that they were not going to be good, and all of a sudden on offense things started to click. I mean, you have to take the weather into consideration there as well, and I don't think I've ever seen a helmet crack like that. Was that the cold that caused it? I don't know, but yeah, just everything in around that game and the Bills game as well. I was actually stunned at how good the weather was for the Bills game, but that Chiefs game, you do have to kind of factor in how much were the Dolphins affected by it being that cold. But let's face it, this Chiefs defense is the strongest it's ever been in the Reid era. And like if Mahomes is starting to click, and let's face it, outside of Brady, what other quarterback do you want to be kind of controlling the team from that point of view too? So like the Chiefs, they were methodical. Like the Dolphins will be disappointed with just how that game went, but where the real interest will be for them, and it just tells you how good Mahomes has been. This is his first road playoff game ever. It just tells you the standard that the Chiefs have been at. And could it be the case that they may get one or two of the wide receivers to finally click? Can Kelsey stop dropping balls as well? Like that game, I mean, it's Bills. Like that's one thing. Like when I was looking at it, like the one benefit of the Steelers getting knocked out, we get to watch the Bills Chiefs again, and like it's turning into, yes, probably is the rivalry of the last couple of years. So, and the Chiefs will go into it as well. Like, I mean, weather conditions, that's not going to affect them. If anything, they're going to be walking around with t-shirts on if it's like minus 15. Like you're looking at the Chiefs, you're kind of worried. Like if I'm the rest of the league, are they kind of doing what the Patriots were always very good at? They're in the playoffs and, oh God, these guys are just now turning it on. And if they do, the Chiefs-Bills game, I mean, that's going to be great, but they will be happy with how it went. And I think the Dolphins, it's a real failure for them, given like at the start of the season how many people had them backed, and just the way their season, they just fell off a cliff. Like not as badly as the Eagles, but they really did fall off a cliff in terms of that game against the Bills. That game, if it had gone differently, where would they be now? But they really, I think they really did disappoint, and a lot of people are kind of saying they need to kind of toughen up front as well, and kind of get that bit more grit and that bit more edge as well, because they're not going to have every game in Miami, and they're going to have to get used to playing up the north, be it against say Pittsburgh or Kansas City or any of those areas as well. They need to do a bit of retooling over on the off season too.
Absolutely, Simon.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just not buying the Chiefs this year. I'm just not buying them. I actually give Miami a chance. And look, Miami were beat up in particularly the defensive side of the ball. But there's something about the Chiefs I'm just not buying. Even the last day, they kicked a lot of field goals. Their red zone efficiency wasn't great. There's just something about them that I'm not happy with this year. I don't like it. Look, fair enough, defensively they're playing well, but I'm not buying them. As I said, look, Buffalo had their injuries next week. You just don't know, but there's just something with the Chiefs I'm not sure of. I looked it up today. They were 19th ranked in the league this year in red zone efficiency. That's not great. No, that's on touchdowns. That's not great return for Mahomes and co. Miami, I don't know what they're going to do in Miami. I read today that there's talk that the ownership are happy enough to extend Tua, and you're probably looking at a $40 million a year contract for Tua, which is a man who too frequently, he has average performances, and he has the weapons around him. So like it's going to be an awful lot of money. There's different question marks about McDaniel's play calls, and like to me it seemed like they went lateral an awful lot, particularly out of the backfield. When they went down the field, like they got that touchdown that Hill got came on the back of a pass to Hill where he picked up maybe 17, 18 yards, opened up, passed down the field again. I think Miami probably have a lot of questions to answer. But as I said, I'm not entirely sure. Do I buy the Chiefs? The refs in that game were cat as well, I thought. Geez, there was some flags that were missed, which were ridiculous. There was one pass interference call that was blatant, and it was a touchdown if it wasn't a pass interference. I thought they were very, very poor, and like I know in the playoffs they say they lead defensive play and all that, but there's going to be blatantly missed calls like that. I don't know what you're like. I remember a few years ago. Do you remember pass interference was reviewable there at one stage, and then they scrapped it very quickly. It only lasted about a season that it was reviewable. I'm kind of half thinking that like it mightn't be a bad thing to bring back in again. But look, we'll see how the Chiefs get on next week. But look, I wouldn't be backing no to win it out. I'll just put you that way.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, look, I think from a Kansas City Chiefs perspective, I mean, 6 out of 15 in third down efficiency, that's going to have to steadily improve heading to Buffalo. But I thought run game wise, 147 yards on the ground that really set the platform for Kansas City Chiefs. But I suppose next week's really when the playoffs really kick into gear. I suppose, guys, we might kind of leave the wildcard weekend and maybe focus in on the divisional round games. So Saturday we have 2 fixtures on tap. We have the Houston Texans. Like, we haven't really talked about CJ Stroud yet, but they travel to Baltimore Ravens. And then the Saturday night game sees the Green Bay Packers travel to San Francisco 49ers. And then Sunday, we have Detroit Lions, Tampa Bay, and then the Buffalo Bills against Kansas City Chiefs. I suppose, guys, we haven't really touched upon the Houston Texans that much. It was an outstanding performance of CJ Stroud, the offensive line, really. But again, heading into Baltimore Ravens, do you give Simon Houston a chance here?
I'm sure I suppose you have to give them a chance. Look, as I said, Baltimore haven't played for a few weeks. They didn't play last week. The week before, pretty much all the starters were rested. So Baltimore are going into this game maybe a little bit cold. We spoke about Lamar last week. He has his ups and downs. It's hard to say. Now, the only thing I will say, I think the real strength of the Baltimore team is in coverage. I think, like we spoke about Denard Wilson last night coming over from Philadelphia and his defensive backs coach there. And I think they're desperately strong there. And if you think about the Houston Texans are all about these big, massive chunk plays where they go 60 yards down the field. Stroud is outstanding at them. But if you're going to be playing against a team that have a very, very good setup with their defensive backs, I wonder is Stroud going to be under pressure. Now, after they won last week, during the week, it just came into my head. I look back, the Jets beat them in the regular season, beat the Houston Texans, and beat them well. The Houston Texans only got a touchdown. They beat them as 33-6 or 36 or something like that. I couldn't understand like how the Jets can be beating a team like this but keeping them such a low score. And like the Jets, like the PFF ranked the Jets as the number 1 defense last year, have an unbelievable defensive back unit. And I just wonder, will Stroud, he's a fantastic player, will he be found out this week? If you're looking at different alignments in front of you, I just wonder, would he be found out? Now Danny mentioned Larry Tunsil last week, and you're dead right. Like, I don't know, did he cost them 2 first-round picks? But geez, he's fairly cleared up that side of the line, But yeah, I'd be just worried, thrown into that coverage, will Stroud, will he be under pressure this week?
Yeah, because Texans really didn't provide anything as a run game against the Cleveland Browns, so they're definitely going to have to complement CJ Stroud in the run game, surely.
Yeah, it's almost like they didn't need to. Like I said, Tunsil was like, it was just, that's what I found really just the standout thing, the way that he was able to shut down, the way that he did shut down Garrett. But they do need to balance up the offense a bit. But like, even from the Texans' perspective, like they're in bonus territory now. Like they'll be going into this game going, well, we've no pressure, lads, because they won the division. They've got, like, even with the playoffs, like, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets coach of the year as well, just based off of that. I mean, like, the Ravens, like 9 times out of 10, the Ravens win this game. I mean, even like if they went through some stats, no team has had a better record against teams with over 500, I think, in the history of the NFL than the Ravens this season. They're like, it's it seems almost inevitable that they are going to get to the Super Bowl at the very least. The only thing you could see maybe that might trip them up is what's happened to Lamar in the previous playoff run, well, potential playoff runs where he's kind of tripped himself up. But I mean, it's all set up. They have it set up in terms of every game will be at home. Yeah, I think it's like the Texans, they'll need to play a near on perfect, and the Ravens will need to have a collapse near the Cowboys from that perspective. But like, I think even the game from last weekend, it's introduced Stroud and that Texans team from the perspective of, yeah, like they can now compete with the big boys, and it's nuts. Him and Love. If you look at, did you see the chart that was doing the rounds? Their stats from both games. They were absolutely nearly identical in every crucial metric, even QBR rating. Like, that tells you, like, these two, when we said young players coming through, they both came through in spades. But yeah, on the road against that Ravens team, again, they're in bonus territory. So if they keep it close, I think they'll be doing well. But yeah, I mean, I can't see anybody stopping the Ravens full stop.
Mark, yeah. I think you're on the ball there, Mark, what you're saying about complementing the pass game with the run game. And actually, I spoke about the Baltimore coverage. I actually think a weakness is possibly their run defense. Unfortunately, I don't know if Houston, I don't think, like, Devin Singletary there, he came over as kind of a backup. Like, it wouldn't have been first, they wouldn't have foreseen that at the start of the season that he'd be their lead back. I don't think they'll have the run game for them. I just, unless, as Danny's saying there, unless it's a collapse like Dallas last week, I think Baltimore will probably win that game.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose the Saturday night game over in the US is Green Bay, after fresh from their win in Dallas, they travel to destroy the plans of San Francisco 49ers. I mean, we were talking about San Francisco 49ers last week being maybe kind of warm favourites for the NFC Championship. I mean, they're in the spotlight this week. Do we see a good performance off the 49ers this week, Dan?
Yeah, no, my thoughts haven't changed there. The Niners, outside of the Ravens, are the most balanced across offense and defense. And interestingly, when it came to the Packers, even when they were at their absolute peak, the one team they nearly always seemed to trip up against was, although somebody said it'd be hilarious if Love beats the team that always bet Favre in the Cowboys, and then he beats the team that always bet Rodgers in the 49ers. But yeah, I think the Niners, they're locked and loaded. It's now or never for them, especially given the defensive trades that they made as well during the year. But like, again, the Packers, similar to the Texans, like, they're in bonus territory. I mean, like we said, I'd say all of us would have had the same reaction watching that game against the Cowboys from the point of view of where in the name of God did this come from. I think the one thing with the Packers, they've more a bit of a balance in terms of, like, when you mentioned, Mark, about the run pass games, they seem to have much more of a balance than the Texans would. But also at the same time, I don't think that the Packers wide receivers are going to basically get the run of the backfield like they did against that. Matt Patricia should, and you just think of the Eagles, Matt Patricia should even get a job in high school after the job he did there. Like, there was, and we mentioned about Quinn as well before. Yeah, the Seahawks are probably going, we'll call you, because a lot of defensive reputations really fell by the wayside at the weekend for the Browns, the Cowboys, and the Eagles. But I think Niners should, like, it might be, they don't tend to trip up in these games. It's normally the conference game where half the team gets injured in the first half. So yeah, I'd say they should get through.
Yeah, Simon, 49ers.
Yeah, Danny, you were mentioning the man in Houston there has been possible coach of the year. I think Matt LaFleur has done an absolutely amazing job in Green Bay. Like, he has a stable of wide receivers. I seen Mark text during the match the other night. I think Alan Lazard left Green Bay to get paid $12 or $13 million a year with the Jets, and the full wide receivers room with the Packers, I think, only counts about $7.5 million against their salary cap.
Oh my God!
Wow.
It's absolutely amazing. Like, they're all young fellas. They're all, they're not exactly, low draft picks. They're not, first round, second round receivers and that. I think that Matt LaFleur has done an amazing job. Leaving Jordan Love sit for a couple of years, and it appears that he's like a veteran quarterback at this stage. No, they were fantastic the other night. The 49ers are obviously a fantastic team. Obviously, the strength of the 49ers is their run game, and I think that will be the main matchup in this game: the run game with 49ers versus the run game with the Packers. Which one? I suppose sizes up the best. I mentioned Aaron Jones last week that I thought he looked very fresh in their last regular season game, and I thought he was outstanding the last day against Dallas. I look, you're right what you're saying, Danny. I think everything points towards the 49ers at home, okay, with their little bit of a break. But you just never know. And I'd be hopeful that it'll be, a high scoring game, and at least the Packers are in it for 2-3 quarters anyway. And see, hopefully it'll be an entertaining game, that we don't have another blowout. With the Niners, I'd be expecting big games there. Like obviously McCaffrey and Samuel are kind of the headline names. But I think Brandon Ayuk had a great year this year. I think anything you read in the Niners, the general notion out there is that Ayuk is probably the best route runner on the team, he's polished. I think the Niners are going to win that game. But look, hopefully, as I said, hopefully we'll get a game that's not a blowout like a few of the games last weekend.
Yeah, I completely agree. Now, one element here may be the weather in San Francisco. There's apparently stormy weather arriving in the Bay Area on Saturday. They're not quite sure right now as we kind of go to air whether that hits or not. So, run game equal fumble in a stormy, wet day. So it's that'll be kind of an element here. But look, I think Green Bay have nothing to really lose here, guys, do they? I mean, 49ers are going to be very hot favourites, even from the Vegas bookies here. So that'll be an interesting one. And again, Daniel Whelan, the Enniskerry native, had a good, solid performance in his debut playoff fixture last weekend. 3 punts for 313 yards. So, I mean, it's a nice story. Hopefully that could keep going. But, yeah, I'll be with you guys. I mean, unless the 49ers really do kind of slump, I think that looks like a home win there as well. I suppose Sunday then, we kind of touched on it. Tampa Bay travel to Detroit. Are we giving Tampa Bay, Baker Mayfield, any chance here, Danny?
I suppose the one thing there could be in their favor is how much did that win take out of the Lions from a physical, but also from post game, from an emotional standpoint. Will the Lions be able to kind of get themselves back up after? Because you could see it really was just the nature of the game too. It really was draining from that perspective. Could the home atmosphere kind of count against them in terms of could the pressure hit? That's where I could see this game maybe affecting the Lions from. But again, it's funny how many teams are already in bonus territory. Like we said, Packers are in bonus, Texans. I mean, the Bucs as well came out of what will go down as one of the worst divisions probably ever. But again, comfortably beating the Eagles, and the fact that they were able to do so at a canter, there is a chance. It's not going to be as one-sided as I think. And I think the Lions, you could see post game the emotional toll of winning that could come back to bite them as well. But the home factor, I think it could be close, but I would just lean to the Lions as well, because I think as well that emotion could really help them. They could ride the crest of that wave as well. And it's, like I said, most neutrals watching these playoffs now, there's a very good chance that a lot of them are going to be supporting the Lions just based off of Tampa Bay in that atmosphere. I mean, granted, the coach got interviewed? How are you going to cope with the elements this weekend against Detroit? And he's like, it's under a dome. So yeah, I think under the dome may help. I could see this being a close game, but I'm even kind of hoping in terms of a good conference game that the Lions do get through, because I think if Tampa Bay make it, it'll be an absolute massacre.
Yeah, I'd agree, Simon.
It's the one game this weekend that strikes me that it could be an absolute shootout. I think both teams have weaknesses in their coverage. So, and both quarterbacks have arms and control. I'd say this thing it could turn into a fierce high-scoring shootout, now to tell you the truth. I'd be hopeful that Detroit would win. I think, as you were saying, Danny, all neutrals would be going for Detroit. Look, Tampa Bay might, obviously they have a fantastic wide receivers room. They have a very strong tight end. So Mayfield has his weapons. If it hits, or an NFC South team reaches the conference final,
hilarious.
Jesus Christ. All this talk about Bill Belichick going to Atlanta, to be honest, I think half the reason is he's probably looking at that division saying, Jesus, that's another couple of easy wins every year. I think he only needs 20-something wins to be the most winningest coach, as they say in the States. And I'd say he's probably said, geez, I might be able to do this 3-year job and a 2-year job if I go to the NFC South. But Yeah, look, I'm looking forward. It's a nice time for us, 8 o'clock on Sunday evening, Irish time. I'm looking forward to that game. And as I said, I in a dome, nothing really to be dealing with. I think this thing could turn into just both its quarterbacks thrown into 350 plus yard games and it going absolutely mental score. Saying that now, it'll probably be 9-7 or something like that.
Safety will decide it.
Exactly. Oh God, imagine. But I'm kind of looking at these fixtures, and I think the Sunday fixtures do literally stand out. And I think that Lions Buccaneers game certainly is one that could go down right down to the last play, as you say here, Simon. I don't know. I just has a funny feeling about Tampa Bay, just the way they've kind of kept going, the momentum they've built. I was very impressed by them against Philadelphia, but again, that day turnaround as well. Is that going to be a factor? I think if there's going to be a road trip win here, it may be here in Detroit, unfortunately, for all the purists. I think maybe Tampa Bay for me anyway. And I suppose, guys, get your head in the block here. Bills or the Chiefs on Sunday. Simon?
I hope the Bills win. So I'm going to go for the Bills. I'm not entirely sure they will win. But I'm just hopeful in Buffalo. Look, obviously they've had their injuries, but as I said, they're riding the wave. They're 6 games unbeaten, won 7 out of the last 8. I just feel that this could be the year the Bills could upset the whole show. Okay. I think they're very good. I think they're very solid on defense. And if they can just get a little bit healthier on offense, I think it's there to be won. As I said, I'm not buying the Chiefs this year. Even if the Chiefs happen to win on Sunday, I'm not buying them in the conference final. So yeah, I'm going for Buffalo, and I'm bullish. I think they could win.
Yeah, Danny, but this is Buffalo. This is the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm even thinking of it. Say maybe I'd be along the same lines as Simon. Like I think that the Bills will get through, and I'm even looking at it from the point of view of it's too early for the Bills yet to heartbreak their fan base. Because they have timed their run perfectly. And like I said, against the Steelers, they were steamrolling them in that first half. They seem to have a lot going for them. And again, like if this turns into a shootout between Allen and Mahomes, like I think Allen is he's probably one of the very few who can match Mahomes when it comes to that arm. Although what I think is funny in terms of I saw somebody reacted to when they saw it's the Bills and the Chiefs and the referees going, "Oh no, wait, we favor both these teams. Who are we supposed to go for now?" I think with the home factor as well, Bills Mafia being behind it, I think the Bills will get through to they will progress to the conference champion because again they've timed it perfectly, and it's like if you're looking at it from a neutral standpoint, probably outside of the lines, the Bills are probably the other side that most people would like to see progressing. And yeah, I think Bills will get through. Granted, we're kind of all going with kind of pretty much the straightforward. Oh, it'll be Ravens against Bills and Niners against Lions potentially in the conference championships as well. So, but yeah, it hopefully will be as good as the previous playoff games these two have had against each other. I mean, if we get anything like the previous time, that'll be worth watching in and of itself.
Yeah.
The Josh Allen touchdown the last day. I think if you were to pick one kind of example of something to define the Buffalo Bills this year, I think it was gets his ball, takes off and run, throws a bit of a sidestep like that. He's 6'5" or 6'6".
Yep.
Sits your man down and runs it in. I'd love to see Buffalo. I'd love to see Buffalo win. As I said last week, I was over at the game in London. Where they played Jacksonville, and my one takeaway from that weekend was the sheer enthusiasm that the Bills Mafia have. They're they're a fantastic bunch, and they enjoy their football up there. So I'd be very hopeful that they could win that, and you never know what could happen in the division final.
Oh God, absolutely. No, I think it's all set, guys, to be a very exciting divisional round this weekend. I suppose before we go, guys, we spoke last week, Black Monday, NFL firings. We had touched on a few, particularly in Atlanta Falcons, Washington Commanders, obviously. New England Patriots, we had speculated about Bill Belichick, and so it proved Jared Mayo basically gets installed immediately. And I hear minimal backroom staff changes. That's another day's discussion. But I suppose, guys, looking around the league here, Pete Carroll, gone from Seattle Seahawks. Mike Vrabel, imagine 2 years ago, Tennessee Titans. I suppose which one of these head coaches here that have been defunct is probably going to get a job in the NFL next season? I suppose, Danny?
Teams will be chasing well, outside of Belichick, because again everybody wants him. Vrabel, I think, will get a job pretty straightforward. I mean, you look at the Titans, it just sounds like there was a difference of opinion between him and the owner, and there's only ever going to be one winner when it comes to that side of it. I mean, this year they did kind of plateau, and you look over them, you look at the Titans for the next couple of years with Henry gone, with Tannehill going, with Vrabel gone. Where are they going to be going? Yeah, I think Vrabel, he's definitely going to be a coach who's going to be in demand. And yeah, even with Belichick, like I don't know how many of you were on Twitter during the Cowboys game, and by halftime people were going, he's going to get Belichick in, isn't he? He's going, oh my God, they're actually going to go. Could you imagine, like, the Cowboys would build Belichick as their coach? It would just be absolutely insane. But yeah, I think Belichick, I mean, even when we saw he was interviewed for the role with the Falcons, that must have been a fun interview. Give us an example of where you've had to go through a tough game. You just would have had to point at them and that's it. So I don't know about going. Yeah, I don't know in terms of. You mentioned, Simon, in terms of he wants to, like, he'll want to go to a team who will be in contention. I don't know if the Falcons are at that level. Like, I'd say even like the Chargers will be an interesting one with Harbaugh winning in Michigan. He looks like he's in pole position for that job as well. But like, even with the Chargers, does even Harbaugh or Belichick, do they have the powers to really turn over what's an absolute curse of a franchise?
Yeah,
I'd agree. Simon?
Do you know, just on Harbaugh, I saw a few things online today that he's happy enough to stay in Michigan.
Oh,
it's all only shooting the breeze. No, I don't know if it's true.
Well, granted, it's since Saban has announced it, nearly the entire Alabama team has put themselves in the transfer portal. So
absolutely brutal. Like the whole Saban thing in Alabama, like, so obviously 6 national championships with Alabama. But like, as you're saying, just touching on it, I think it's the whole NIL crack that, like, has taken away the fun for Saban. You know, like, Alabama was the powerhouse and they could recruit whoever they wanted to recruit.
Yeah. It made it so much more fun, though.
Yeah, it did. I remember at one stage someone said to Saban, would he ever think about going back into the NFL? And he said, sure, why do I go back into the NFL where you only have one first-round draft pick a year, whereas in college he could have had 11 or 12 effectively first-round draft picks. But the NIL crack has changed the face of college football totally, and in a very, very short space of time. And as you're saying, Danny, they're all out the door in Alabama now since he left. Mark, going back to your question, I think Vrabel is going to get a job soon. I think if Philly part ways with Strani, I think he goes in there. Like, Danny, I think you're on the ball. I think he had some bit of falling out in Tennessee, and like, Vrabel was very, toward the line the time that they traded AJ Brown, and said, look, he was happy with the decision and he was involved. But like, I am not entirely sure that was true. Sure, like, you can see even statistically since AJ Brown left, they've gone down. I know they went out and got Hopkins, but like, Hopkins is probably coming towards the end of his career now, whereas Brown was their number one elite receiver. I think Belichick, like, everything's pointing towards the Falcons, and that, look, he did the interview and all this kind of crack. You'd wonder, is it only all those shooting the breeze, and with the hope that someone else gets encouraged to come into the game. You have the Chargers, and you have the Chargers who have a quarterback set up there already. You have the Dallas Cowboys who look like they're ready to win. I actually thought that we didn't really speak much about Dallas last week. Last week I mentioned that Gilmore got injured in that last game against the Eagles, and they already lost Diggs earlier in the season. It turns out Gilmore played the game last week and he had to go for some kind of a shoulder injury or something like that. He tore his labrum or something in the shoulder. So, like, I'd say, like, Dallas were hurt last week going into that game. Obviously they went to one, like, but like, it was probably unlucky the way things went. So look, Belichick will go somewhere, but I'm not entirely sure it will be Atlanta. You could see him in Dallas, you could see him in LA, where he's a ready-made quarterback. He has his offense ready to go. He just needs to instill a Belichick D and see how it goes.
Yeah, no, because my day job, I speak to an awful lot of guys from Texas, and word on the street there is that they're expecting White Smoke to hit out Jerry Jones's mansion pretty soon regarding Mike McCarthy, I think, to be fair. So I think that's one to probably watch here. I suppose, guys, we'll leave it there. I mean, it's going to be an exciting divisional round weekend. And I suppose next week we'll run the rule over those games and also look at the conference championships. 8 turns into 4, and we're going to get tantalising close to Super Bowl finalists. So until then, guys, have a great weekend. Enjoy the football, and we'll talk next week.
Thanks, bro. See you.
Thank you for listening to this podcast episode. If you liked what you heard in this podcast, why not subscribe to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast on either Amazon, Spotify, YouTube or Twitter platforms. You can also follow me at Hawkeye Sidekick on Facebook and Twitter for the latest sporting opinions, articles and reports.